Okay, the goal isn't that far from here, just one jump to go. If I fall, it's over for me. So, here goes. 1, 2, 3.
Hey! Game over!
3D. The fabled Z-axis. The thing that... Hey, excuse me? Yeah? Yeah, I'm doing my thing right now. Yeah, well, I actually own this channel, so if I could... You own it? Yeah, so if I could have it back, please, that would be really appreciated. 3D platformers are nothing new nowadays, but back on the 5th console generation, they were all the rage. Nintendo had hit a slam dunk with the likes of Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. Sony gave us Spyro and Crash, and Sega brought the Blue Blur out into the open. No matter which console you had plenty of options. I was no stranger to these games as a kid. I was a little PS1 boy and my cousin had an N64, so between the both of us we got to experience a wide breadth of what the two had to offer. Even if he did steal my copy of Spyro 2, Mark. Anyways, my love of platformers well and truly endured into my teens. While all of my friends were playing Call of Duty and Borderlands, I was playing The Legend of Spyro on the Wii with motion controls. I was also getting into top 10 lists on YouTube, a lot of them at that, particularly the negative ones. Clickbaiters must have loved to see me coming because the slightest ounce of hyperbole had me foaming at the mouth. Top 10 absolute worst ass poop shit games of all time. Gimme! Through watching these lists, I became aware of a particular game that seemed to be pretty popular on them. It was never spoken of fondly, believe you me, so its infamy made it stick in my mind well into my adulthood. Now it takes up the grey matter in my head where precious memories could have been stored. Earliest birthdays? Don't need that. Now, as a grown man and a knowledge of how to legally acquire and play games otherwise inaccessible, I can finally put my curiosity to rest and see what all the fuss is about with Bubsy 3D. Now, I may have sent a few shivers down people's backs by saying that name, but for those sitting there with no clue who Bubsy is, let me fill you in. In late 1991, Bubsy, Claw's Encounter of the Third Kind, funny, began development by Accolade. According to Wikipedia, the designer, Michael Berlin, found inspiration for it after playing Sonic the Hedgehog for 14 hours a day for a week. Dude was committed, holy shit. The game follows Bubsy Bobcat on a journey to protect the world's yarn supply from the Woolies who wish to steal it. A cute premise that feeds into Bubsy's design well, I'd say. Better than the likes of what Cool Spot had to offer. Despite some flaws regarding cheap one-hit deaths and slightly funky momentum, the game was received fairly well, prompting Accolade to work on a second. Bubsy 2 did not involve Berlin, and despite also receiving well, he has since made it clear they did not understand the vision of the original game. I feel like this can be seen in the fact it does the whole time travel gimmick a lot of games seemed to use back then. Feels like an easy way to create diverse levels. The same can be said for the third Bubsy game, Bubsy in Fractured Fairy Tales. This game had Bubsy going through corrupted fairy tales to help repair them, which was a bit of a far cry from the premise of the first. It also reviewed far worse than the previous two, so a change was sorely needed. Then, at long last, thankfully, our Lord and Saviour Michael Berlin was brought back for the 4th instalment, Bubsy 3D for the PS1, released in 1996. Were Bubsy to have stopped after the third game, his name would have likely faded into obscurity. A sad yet peaceful death for who was once a decent platforming mascot. But unfortunately, we live in a world where that didn't happen. We live in a world where this game exists. A travesty of a video game that I decided to put myself through, and I'll be taking you with me. Oh shit, did I break that? I started my playthrough off with high hopes. I figured I'd played some jank before. I'd been playing the Tomb Raider remasters not too long ago, and they used tank controls just like this game. This would surely be no problem. It was a problem. After enjoying the intro cutscene and admiring the title screen, I was met with level 1 and woof, where to begin? Well, right away you can see the game is ugly. Levels are made up of simple geometric shapes with little to no textures, making the game look flat out unfinished in places. It's truly an eyesore, but hey, the colours weren't yet clashing in a way that made my head hurt, so I figured I could handle it. Then you start pressing buttons and things only get worse. As alluded to before, this game uses tank controls, leaving you with very little freedom of movement, which is like, kind of important for a 3D platformer. You don't see Spyro chugging along like he's stuck neck deep in mud. Camera also does the controls no favours, as it pivots to a bird's eye view every time you jump. It is a little helpful when it comes to landing those jumps between platforms, but having the camera yanked from you is so jarring for something you're doing all the time. But again, whatever, I can handle this. Lara Croft is strange to control at first, but with time you can adapt. I figured the same would be true here, so I persisted. I hit the question mark in front of me and suddenly I'm reminded of one of the main reasons why this game is so hated.
So, you wanna be a video game star?
See, Bubsy is particularly remembered for one main reason, his quips. And plenty of reviews of the game made it real clear they hated them. I, however, find it to not be that bad. He's just a little guy who likes to talk. I also like to talk. We're meant for each other. Now, admittedly, he does say a lot of things in pretty quick succession in the first level, but once he's done teaching you how the game works, he only really speaks when he's hit, gains a life, or kills an enemy, which I don't think is too much. At least I didn't find it to be. He did make my game lag when loading his lines though. Anyway, I beat the first level and discover that each one ends with a result screen where you get a little animation of the Bobcat himself. These were really charming to see and they made getting through the levels a bit more enjoyable. Like, a smidge. Level 2 proves to be more of a challenge with more enemies and more hazards this time around, but being the platformer god that I am, I die. Only to find one of the many unique death animations Bubsy has. The first I came across was him drowning, followed by him doing this little flip thing, then getting electrocuted, shattered, gooped. There's a lot of these. They add nothing to the game mechanically, and you can skip them pretty easily if you want, but I feel like they really show the love the devs had for the little guy. After all, how else do you show your love for a character than by putting them in situations? The next few levels go by without note. I started to get a feel for the jank controls and began to wonder why exactly this game was hated to the extent it was. Was it amazing so far? Absolutely not. But was it the worst? But then I reach the first boss. It was actually fine. You'd think a boss fight with controls like these would be a real pain to get through, but the biggest issue was finding out what to do in the first place. See, the guy flying the calculator fires bolts at you, leaving patches on the ground you need to avoid. Turns out you need to use these patches to hover high into the air and bonk him on the head 3 times to win. And even though the camera fought with me at every turn, I managed to beat it in about 3 tries, so take that, Professor Wooly Nerdopovich. God, poor guy. The levels after also go by fairly easily. The platforming ramps up a little in difficulty, but remains easy enough to get through despite the controls. They throw in a few water levels too, which end up being the kindest levels to go through on account of being able to swim. It still doesn't control amazingly, and Bubsy swims at a snail's pace, but you don't have to deal with his funky momentum or jumps, which is a win. Waiter, more water levels please. Soon enough, Boss 2 arrives. Bubsy, as shown in one of the post-level cutscenes, escapes a dome he was trapped inside, only to be caught and taken to a coliseum for some mortal bobcat. Ugh. His whole thing is that he'll charge at you and try to squish you flat. Jump on his belly instead and the crowd will boo and throw banana skins at you, revealing the way in which you win the fight. If you line up the mammoth with a peel between you and it, he'll slide on it right into the lasers around the arena. Repeat this a few times and he drowns in a pool of acid. God, I'm so sorry. Surprisingly, I like this boss. It's simple, requires a little bit of careful placement, and lacks the unfair bullshit the first boss had. Though, you will get sick of the one mammoth sound they have by the end. At this point, we're more than halfway through. All this time I'd heard horror story after horror story about this game, but apart from dealing with outdated game controls and a gross camera, I had yet to really understand why it got that reputation. though it could be that a lot of it was the typical YouTuber exaggeration of the time. One thing worth mentioning though is that my fingers were hurting. Given the nature of tank controls, the D-pad tends to give you a little more control than the analog stick. It just comes at the cost of rubbing your thumb across those bumpy plastic nubs. But with only 6 levels to go, I figured I could endure it. But then I got sick. Obviously, playing Bubsy while ill was the absolute last thing I wanted to do with my time, so I instead spent it playing a good game. I was already pretty close to the end, so I finished it, had a cheeky cry, fell asleep, then woke up right as rain the day after. Which meant more Bubsy. I suppose nice things can't last forever. So, begrudgingly, I moved on to the home stretch, where shit got hard. Up to now, most enemies could be handled with a bonk on the head. The rest need to be hit by the collectible atoms that you can fire, which is stiff and clunky. But given those few enemies don't particularly move, this is fine. However, these slime things are near invisible, fast as hell, and do not die from being jumped on. Get ready to hear nothing but because that is all you will get in the next few levels. I handled it though, so whatever. There isn't much left. See? Level beaten. Just 3 more and it crashed. Oh well, I'll just load up my latest save state and so I may have placed a teensy bit too much faith in the one automatic save state my legit copy had, which meant having to reboot and start from the very beginning. At this point, I had 14 hours of footage. 14 hours of Bubsy Bobcat, and all of that progress had just gone down the drain. Am I to blame? Yes. Am I stupid? Maybe that too. But am I also someone who will heroically undergo those trials and tribulations once again to deliver as genuine and pure a Bubsy 3D experience as I can give? Of course not. I'm not doing all that again. So, I cheated. I unlocked all levels with a handy little code, but I still swore to put myself through the last few levels to ensure I saw everything this awful game had to offer. But now, with a couple more lives. Because, hey, I have a limited amount of time on this earth, and I'm not willing to give more than I need to this piece of crap. So with extra lives in hand, I could jump back into the last 3 levels with reckless abandon. It wasn't all smooth sailing, mind you, as these stages upped the amount of water they would use, which happens to be an instant death should you land in it. Though knowing I didn't have to start back at the beginning of the levels on a game over was enough comfort to help me through. I inched my way through, dying over and over and over, until finally, at long last, I reach it. The final level, the end of my torment. I hadn't slept well the past few days, so my eyes were heavy, my brain was drained, and I wanted nothing more than to be done with all of this. I set off, navigating the cluttered halls of turrets, leaving me feeling lighter than before. I bravely conquer the mini-boss the Queen sent to try and end my rampage, and rack my brain to solve the impossibly difficult switch puzzle they set before me as their final line of defence, before arriving at their feet for the final showdown. It was a 2v1, so the odds were heavily stacked against me already. They fired relentlessly, but I managed to weave between their shots to hit the switch in the middle, allowing me to grab and fire the atoms around the stage. 3 shots fired and Queen Polly is down. 3 shots more and Esther joins her. And with that, my journey ends. I sit there expectantly, awaiting the final cutscene I so sorely deserved. The Woolies report that Bubsy escaped their planet in a rocket he was able to scrounge together, only to hear he ended up stranded in space, because I hadn't gathered all the collectible rockets in the levels. Now, I'm a completionist at heart, but all of the trouble the game gave me, the stiff camera, unfair enemies, the horrendous soundtrack, it was like the game had turned that part of me off. Just getting through it was more than enough for me. I had earned my bragging rights. While I wouldn't play the game again, I'd say I enjoyed my time with it. It wasn't outstanding by any means, but I find there's some satisfaction to be had in conquering a janky game like this. Plus it's fun to see just how bad things could be. After all, the worst thing a game can be is boring, and this was hardly that. So bearing in mind this is simply an any percent playthrough, would I say this game is still deserving of the title worst game of all time? Absolutely not. We live in an age where online marketplaces are filled with poorly made AI generated slop games made to profit off the latest trends. While this game is clearly lacking a lot of the quality you'd see in other platformers of the time, the amount of love and care put into it is evident through all of the voice lines, cutscenes and death animations. They loved Bubsy, I'm sure of it. And even if they weren't able to create a good game for him, the fact they tried will forever make what they made better than whatever this is. So with all of this in mind, and with Bubsy stuck in the endless void of space, I say we bid him farewell. May we honour his legacy by looking at his worst game a little more fondly than before. Goodbye, sweet prince. Never mind, screw me I guess, because as of the making of this video, a Bubsy collection was announced by Limited Run Games, and it has Bubsy 3D with full analog control. Then they go and announce Bubsy 4D, what the hell is going on?